All right, we're at the SSA Conference in Little Rock, Arkansas, with Clinton from, where are you from, Clinton?
Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, yeah, Savannah, Georgia. And so we're just going to talk about your biography, how you got here. And so I know that's probably a long story, but anyway, the short version.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. I grew up very, so my family was Christian. We would go to like a Baptist church and stuff like that.
And the more conservative Baptist, like evangelical Baptist, because even Baptist, I think there's quite a spectrum.
It's like
Southern Baptist.
It wasn't as important to us. We would go to church,
Yeah.
and we would go to church fairly often, but it wasn't like my mom's the kind of person that's just very much like, oh, look how beautiful it is, thank God, and this and that. But it's not so much as like that
Yeah.
we were like praying over everything in the home. It was, or even like saying grace at dinner. It was just more of like a
Social, cultural thing, maybe?
kind of.
Okay.
So it's like maybe in the middle,
Okay.
Once I was around,
And you had siblings?
I did. I do have an
Have
older
siblings.
sibling that doesn't play too much of a role in my
Okay, all right.
religious experience. Whenever I was around 15 years old, we had gone to a church that we just did not like, and so I was looking for a new one.
You personally?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had just gotten a car with a learner's permit, and where I lived, I was able to drive at 15. So I found a church. I got involved. I liked it. I liked the music and everything. Signed up for their program, which was called Under Shepherds at the time. I don't know if it still is.
Yeah.
But
Is this like a community church or something? Or PCA
it's
or
a very
something?
big church.
Okay.
Very big into something called fine arts, which is like a national competition between churches and stuff.
Oh.
But it's very like now I think it's like a mega church, Faith Assembly of God in Orlando.
Oh, so does Assembly of God, so it's like charismatic or something?
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
they
easy.
were.
Okay.
They were a vehicle for a lot of people to become either pastors or even.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with like Francesca Battistelli?
No.
So she's on a lot of the Christian radio stations now.
Oh, that's
she was
why
a friend
I'm
of mine.
not familiar with her.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not up on the Christian music scene.
well, yeah.
I know a couple of people who sing hymns.
I hung out with her. She was, she's like the.
I know
like,
Amy Grant.
Okay.
And a few others, yeah, but I don't really follow up close. Anyway, so you were actually hanging out with her.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
she's like a major artist.
There's quite a few like famous people that came from the church because it was like such
okay.
a vehicle, like I said, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was very influential for someone like me. It was exciting. I was going to church 5 times a week. I was going for college service to volunteer, high school service. I was part of the youth leadership.
Yep.
Sunday mornings, I helped run the kids service, like a puppet show and stuff like that. I would go
Yeah.
to the main service. I would go to something called the River on Saturday nights, which was 2 to 3 hours of just prayer.
Yeah.
Then I would usually go another night every once in a while for fine arts competition practice.
And this is not just in high school. I take it this extended for a while.
Well, this was all in high school.
It was in high school, okay.
Yeah. After high school, I'd moved and I stopped going to that church. But
Okay.
and I went on several mission trips. Every summer, we would go to a different country.
With that group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was.
So you probably felt like you were at the center of the Christian universe. Things are happening. God's here. Whatever
And the more I walked in this path, I always had these like doubts, and it was always like God works in mysterious ways. We are not able to understand His plan. What are we to a God, a mortal,
Yeah.
to try to understand and comprehend what, His.
Doubts about like your personal experience or things
Yeah.
you were seeing in the Bible or both?
Yes, both. I had friends that were LGBT. I had at the time, and that were not going to the church. Friends in like public school, and I was because of what the church taught me. It was a very evangelical church. We whenever we went on mission trips, we would have like outreaches and just like parking lots at different whatever outside of movie theaters, stuff like that. To help try to convert people, and so it was a mission of mine. I was thinking maybe I'll become a pastor, maybe all this, and more doubts came up. Though the more I started reading the Bible, the more I found that throughout my life I was taught what was in the Bible, but once I actually started opening it and going through it, and I found a lot of things that disagreed with my personal morality. And to me, it's just I just don't understand. Maybe I'm too young.
Moral intuition, you mean? your moral intuition or whatever. Yeah.
So I was like, maybe because I'm so early in my journey, because I was 15, I was like, maybe I'll just get older and I'll figure it out. Everything just felt cloudy though, because it's like it doesn't make sense.
But which specific things you're talking about? One or two things
in the Bible?
Yeah, okay. Just a sample.
Well, there's like the genocide, the women's equality, how they shouldn't speak up unless given permission by their husband and stuff like that, which is something I just disagree with. Slavery in Exodus 21.
So you were reading like Exodus, you're reading 1 Corinthians or whatever, and
I've read everything,
and you're like, hey, this is a problem. And you were only 15 or 16 or whatever when those things were coming out.
Yeah, and these kids made fun of this man for being bald, and then he cursed them in the name of God and killed all of them with the bear. Yeah, it's
why does nobody talk about that one? Where's the Sunday sermon on that one?
Yeah, and it's like it kind of.
I think if I was a bald pastor, I might be tempted.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of cool. It's got a she-bear story mauling people.
A bear, but I know what you mean. Like the
Bible doesn't want for action.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, adults clearly are like, what is going on with this story? Still, right?
Yeah.
So, but you were seeing that all in high school, and did you ask like your youth pastor or one of the shepherds of the under shepherds program or whatever?
I did, and
you didn't?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
And I, because I was heavily involved, so I was like, I had access to these people, and what eventually happened is I had moved away. I never really got satisfactory answers, and as I went to another church, it was my girlfriend's family's church, fiance, ended up being my wife later on.
Yeah.
And the leadership there was like, I still remember, I was telling this person, I was like, I'm having a lot of doubts. These are some of the problems I have. And I laid it out, and I was very thoughtful about it.
How
I was
old
nervous.
Were you at this point?
At this point, I was now around 19 to 20 years old.
Yep. Still, and where are you living?
Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, you're in Orlando. Okay.
And this was a Methodist church.
All right.
And
so you go to them and you lay this out, and
one person told me, well, it sounds like you already made up your mind. And I was like, well, that's kind of like really shutting me down. Okay. Like, I'm coming to you because
Meeting over.
Yeah. And
seriously, that's just like a terrible, even
I agree.
Someone who just like read the Bible generally, you'd think that's probably not the way Jesus taught about.
And I don't think that would be my experience with every Christian, obviously.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty bad.
It was my experience with quite a few.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty bad stuff.
So, like, the doubts just piled up. I prayed for months, and then at some point, after never getting an answer, I realized, like, this story is probably taking longer than it should have. But
this is good. This is really good.
At some point, I really just was like, I need to really understand myself and how I feel. I need to restart and be completely honest with everything.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's just start.
Can I stop you right there then?
Absolutely.
Because I have some backup questions. One is were there outside influences at that point? Were you going to YouTube channels or reading a book where ideas were feeding to the doubts rather than trying to answer them? Were you reading like apologetics and you didn't because I'll hear this a lot. Like people say, well, I went to YouTube and found some apologetic videos, but then atheist videos popped up and I started watching those. So I hear this kind of stuff all the time. So I'm just curious if that was like that or it was just kind of more personal, private.
Being evangelical. I was basically studying to become an apologist.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of the people that I would talk to were the outside influence whenever I was trying to convert them on the street or in another country.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Their arguments, oftentimes I didn't know the answer to, so I started looking up apologist answers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so once I would look up the apologist answer, it would also have the atheist argument.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I guess that's the answer, but honestly, the atheist argument just makes more sense.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it just clicked, like, maybe this is just who I agree with.
Yeah.
I was looking up how to defend against it, but I found that their arguments were more compelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally understandable. I mean, a lot of apologetic stuff, from my perspective, is pretty shallow and pretty unconvincing. Mm-hmm. And it'd be better, actually, for Christians.
Yeah.
Even if, because it's not like all the apologists are garbage, I don't think. There's some that are pretty dang smart and have some reasonable things to say, and then there's a bunch that are grifting.
Yeah, I will say that from a Christian perspective, because I feel like I'm able to put on that hat anytime.
And I was an atheist, so I feel like I can do the atheist side pretty easily too.
I love it. I love playing devil's advocate with even like with a lot of my atheist fellowship. It's like I can like, oh well, this is what they would say. That's like that.
Yeah.
But it's like people like say William Lane Craig. It's very disappointing to hear like the cosmological, the ontological, the teleological arguments, because I was like, these are not arguments meant to ever convert anyone. These are people. I feel like these are arguments for people that already believe and want something to latch onto to help, like sharpen their beliefs.
Yeah.
But I can never see that these kind of arguments going, because that's what I was looking for. I was like, what kind of arguments would convince an atheist?
Yeah.
An atheist hearing the cosmological argument is not convincing.
I mean, I guess like Ed Feser converted, after his PhD in philosophy, and I think he does claim the philosophical arguments, because he started teaching the scholastics because he was bored and he wanted something a little bit more to challenge students, because it's kind of like if you do modern philosophy, for the most part people agree, and the ancients were dumb. It's kind of this default assumption. Not saying he said that, but I'm just saying the default assumption of a student. So he decided he would start. This is his story. He decided he would start teaching the scholastics, just to try and throw something in that people haven't thought about as being serious for a long time. And he ended up converting as a result of the arguments of Aquinas and so on.
Well,
he's the only person.
Like Thomas, yeah.
He's literally the only person I've ever heard give this kind of a story. So I'm just saying I more or less agree, but I guess there is an exception. But yeah, I don't see these arguments as being as like conversion arguments. I don't think I agree that they were doing it just to buttress their faith, in the sense that I think they saw themselves probably as being in the great philosophical tradition that they were baptized into.
Yeah, I should
clarify in the Greek
that
philosophy. That's all.
For me, my personal if I was a Christian, I would never use those. That's what I meant by that.
Sure. Yeah.
For one, it's kind of complicated to, like, if you're not from a philosophical background, to or understand like premises and.
Yeah, I think unless you're like, if people are interested in an argument, like actually interested in the topic, then you can have a conversation about those things, and it can be adjusted to their level.
Yeah,
that's very different from, whatever the debate. But then the debates are often like Craig's debates, I think, or at least used to be. The last I paid attention to them were like with other philosophers. So it was a little bit different kind of, even though they had popular audiences, it was often two philosophers, I think.
Yeah.
At least the two or three that I've seen, and I haven't seen any for probably a decade or more. So, yeah, go ahead.
I feel like the most, I don't know, this wasn't really a question that you had asked, but I feel like the most convincing for me was honestly something that doesn't hold up in a courtroom, but personal stories, personal experiences is like what a lot of people lean back on, their personal relationship with God.
Yep.
And it's the feelings I would get when I would be listening to worship music and worshiping, praying for people and them falling in the Spirit, speaking in tongues. Like, this is all stuff that I experienced in the church. And those were all, like, between that, the emotional investment, and the community, those were the hardest things that probably made me hold on for the longest. Was the me being scared of losing all of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm
and
sure
wasting my time.
Yeah.
Oh, also at the time when I was pretty heavy into Christianity, is whenever I got engaged. By the time it got to the wedding, I was an atheist, which was a very big wedge.
Rough. Yeah, that's rough. That's tough. Did you said there was not just a feeling about not just things in the Bible that you doubted, but things in addition to that? What was one or two things there?
So prayer. I don't feel it was like it was effective or I was heard. For instance, I prayed for answers for months, for just some kind of clarity. I don't need to understand completely. I don't need to know 100%, but just guide me, point me to a Bible verse for support, like for my own comfort, for my own turmoil in my mind.
Yeah, right.
And kind of what I had almost mentioned earlier is, like, as soon as I restarted and looked at it through the lens of a God not existing, everything in the world kind of just made sense. Like, well, this exists because this is happening just because this is how the world is.
Yeah.
Compared to, like, God having a reason for everything, I could not reconcile why,
It's like it became your new horizon line, which I use a lot in, just because if we lose our horizon line, it's vertigo. Yeah. So God provides kind of a horizon line, or Christianity, or whatever their particular religion is. It's a worldview, but I just use the horizon line idea, because I think a lot of people stay believing or stay practicing or whatever, in part because they're like, well, I'd have vertigo. That's what it feels like. Well, what would I go to that would give me another horizon? In your case,
I think it was
there
like
was
a
a
little bit
better.
opposite.
You were experiencing a better horizon line that seemed more orienting to the truth than the one you had had. So, like like ipso facto, that's what you now believe.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
It's funny that you say ipso facto because I use that with my partner all the time, and she hates it because it's like I use
She
it
hates
sarcastically.
ipso facto?
Yeah, I use it sarcastically. So.
you should say, hey, I was interviewing with a guy at the at SSA, and he used ipso facto.
I 100% will bring it up. Yeah.
Don't tell her that I teach Latin.
Uh-huh.
Just do not mention that. It won't help your cause. Just like, you might as well just say, I talked to some geek who studies ancient languages, and he talks like I do.
You know what's funny? I just asked someone. This is unrelated, but really quick. I promise.
Yeah.
I just asked someone yesterday because I always find this fascinating. I asked this of people all over. Can you name the 5 Latin languages? And people always get the big 4, but they always forget the 5th one.
They don't know Romanian.
Yes, because I spent 10 months.
Even though it's got the word in it.
I spent 10 months in Romania, and so I mean, it doesn't sound like any of the other Latin languages, but it's fascinating. Anyway, so get back on topic.
No, that's good. It's really good. I was asking you about something outside of the Bible that played a role.
Oh, yeah,
you gave one thing. What was there? A second thing or no?
So yeah, like I mean, I guess you could.
I'm just fishing out if there was. I don't.
Other than the Bible, the prayer and the arguments and I guess you could sum it down to the problem of evil, but it's like just trying to understand like in what kind of universe does God need kids to have bone cancer for his plan?
Yeah.
If he's all powerful, couldn't he have made the exact if he's omnipotent, make the exact same universe, but where bone cancer doesn't exist. Make the exact same universe, and you can eventually extrapolate
tornadoes, hurricanes.
Yeah, to the extreme of
great white sharks.
Why is there evil then? It's like people say that it's necessary for free will and this and that, but it's like, so is he not? Is that to where he's not powerful enough to create a universe where we could have free will and not evil, or is that in the realm where it becomes a paradox, like making a rock so heavy he can't lift it? So it's like, where does his omnipotence? What's the boundary? And it just the problem of evil, I guess, is the easiest way to say it because I just don't.
It is.
Understand.
It's the problem with evil because it's the source of the vast majority of doubts any believer in God has. I think is probably that. I mean, at least experientially, and it's interesting because the problem of evil immediately. There's a lot of philosophy a lot of theodicy, but it's really philosophy debate. To this day, there's lots of new books written by philosophers on the problem of evil, both sides. Going, sort of the Epicurean riddle as it was originally. He's the first one I know of that posed the riddle of how could an all-loving God, if he was omnipotent, these things couldn't coexist given the world we live in. And it's interesting that it's Epicurus, that it goes back to Epicurus, it's not like a Christian context where the first formulation of the argument comes. But it's interesting how philosophical, like it's obviously philosophical in one sense, right? But it's also deeply intuitive because if you're a parent or you've been a child, which is everybody, you've been one or the other, or both, you immediately just are, like the intuition is so obvious. Like how far would I go to teach my kid a lesson? It's the Grand Inquisitor argument, if you're familiar with it in Dostoevsky. But anyway, I wasn't trying to. I'm just saying it so quickly there's like deep philosophy on this question, and then there's just like strong intuition. But what were you gonna say?
Well, I mean, it's comforting, right, to have like a being that is in direct, has control over your life and is all good. But I almost kind of wish that they would just be like, well, he's not all good. But it's like kind of like but it would make a lot more sense. Like,
but I really believe God is good, like all good.
Oh, I'm not. Oh, yeah. So it's
even
for
though,
me, it would make
even
more
though
sense though.
I'm not going to be able to explain everything he's done.
Yeah.
I don't even feel the burden to explain everything he's done. I feel a deep desire to understand what he's done that's recorded in Scripture, that's a little bit different category from what he's doing on next Tuesday, because for me there's no like direct revelation of a kid who gets, if one of my grandkids gets bone cancer.
Yeah.
I don't expect a direct revelation, but it's different where you have the way I look at Scripture and what's, But yeah.
Do you feel, not to turn the interview around, but do you feel the God of the Old Testament and the God of the...
You work with street epistemology? That's the very nature of it. Go ahead. I don't care. I don't care. You can ask one question.
Yeah. All right. Oh, no. Now I got to read that.
I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Do you feel like the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament is the same God?
No, definitely not.
No?
Yes, of course I do.
I don't mean like...
Am I a Marcionite? You mean? Am I a Marcionite? No, I'm not a Marcionite.
Literally, but like...
But that's becoming more of a thing within Christianity. I'll say that for sure. I see it a lot more out there.
Because
I'm a traditionalist. Yeah.
Yeah. There is a vast difference, though.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
In response, do you think Jesus thought that? From the record we have in the Gospels, is there any evidence that he saw the God of the Old Testament as problematic?
Well, it depends on if you believe in the Apocrypha or not.
I said the Gospels.
Yeah, the Gospels. That's true.
The four Gospels. They are the earliest.
Well, the four Gospels.
Can confirm.
Those are inconsistent. Those are some of the most inconsistent books, though. The different stories.
Don't read it that way, but that's okay. But just saying the general question. In other words, I'm not trying to trick you, of course.
No,
I'm trying to make the point that
I'm forgetting about this. I'm just
I know.
Talk.
What I meant was, if the record shows, that Jesus, I'm a Christian, right? So obviously I follow Christ. If the record showed that he was dismissive, clearly dismissive, or trying to dispense with what what God was doing in the Old Testament, rather than affirm, like the general impression you get, right, like from the beginning of Matthew, is that he's come to fulfill the law and the prophets. It doesn't leave the impression that he's saying...
He hasn't come to change a jot or tittle of the...
Yeah, even though he clearly says, well, you've heard this being said, and I say, but the I say stuff tends to be more like explaining what he thinks what God meant, and what people got wrong, rather than, hey, you heard God say, you shall not murder. I say, you should murder. It's usually not just the opposite of what... So, in other words, I'm going to, as a Christian, say, well, if I'm going to say I'm a Christian, why would I say, take a view that's the opposite of his?
I understand.
Unless I thought it was, like, if I thought it was, they were incoherently, they couldn't hold together, I would just decide he was wrong, and I wouldn't be a Christian anymore. Not like that, but that would be, I guess, the logical conclusion of it.
Yeah. I found there's talking to so many different Christians. There's so many people that every Christian has a different form of their Christianity of what they believe.
But they all are claiming to follow Christ,
Correct.
Just like a Platonist claims to follow the teachings of Plato. And if they clearly reject him, you would just think I guess they're not a Platonist.
Yeah, I agree.
So when I hear Christians who say they're Christian and they more or less end up rejecting half of what he taught. And I'm not talking about my private interpretation, I'm just talking about the general obvious stuff. If they're just like, yeah, I know Jesus or the apostles said this, but I just reject it. It's like, okay, why do you call yourself? I don't understand why you're saying you're a Christian. But yeah, so that would be my view. And of course, the coherence stuff and how inconsistent, or whatever about the Gospels is a whole other thing. Which
we could probably talk about that.
Yeah, we could go on forever. So let me go back to your story,
Sure.
and you can interject any question back at me anytime. Do you get married, and your wife knows this is now?
I was very open with her.
Yeah, and she's like, kind of hard to turn away at that point. Or are you still married to her?
No.
No. And did that play a role in how things fell apart?
It had to, right?
I figured.
There's,
I don't want to go into what all broke. I just was asking if that one thing played a role.
It was a big wedge. It was a big point of contention.
Yeah.
And anytime we brought it up, it was more of oftentimes she would bring it up.
Yeah.
I would lay out my points.
Yeah.
And I'm more than happy to talk about this anytime. I would love to hear your side.
Yep.
And what I got a lot is just I'm just listening. I'm just comprehending what you're saying, but it never was a dialogue. It was like, this is what I feel. What do you feel? And then
Crickets.
Yeah, and then we would move on.
Yeah. I'm sure it was agonizing for both of you. How long did the marriage last?
So, I mean, we were together for 5 years, and then we got married. We were together for another 5 years.
Okay.
So it was a 10-year relationship, but 5 years marriage before the separation.
Yeah, long time. Yeah, tough. Very hard. Are your parents still married?
No.
They divorced somewhere along the way?
My biological parents divorced when I was 2 or 3.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Mine divorced when I was 6. So had lots of step parents after that. And my mom's, that side was pretty irreligious, which is why I was irreligious. My dad's side was Catholic, and so I vividly remember in like 5th or 6th grade saying to a Sunday school teacher somewhere that because we didn't normally go to church, but then there would be like a problem in the marriage or something, then we're at church for 3 months, kind of a thing. And I remember having to go somewhere, or maybe it was at my dad's church, I don't even have a clue, because I would go see my dad and we'd have to go to mass or something. But I just remember a teacher in some class talking about the names of God, and I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and I said, how do we even know God exists? Because in my mind, I'm like, how do we even know this? Because I already was not buying it. You come to, like, you're out of this, and you're married.
Yeah.
Did you still go to church with your wife?
Every week.
Yeah. Yeah. I know some guys like this.
I would go there, and I would stand up during the worship.
Trying to.
I would bow my head during prayer.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys that kind of just play the peace role.
I was very
really believe you.
I was very supportive.
Yep. Yeah, I know some guys like this.
And like I never forced it on her. I was like, this is what I believe. I told her, and I'm willing to talk about it anytime. And every few months, it was like, I guess it would boil up. She would ask about it. I would restate my points. Yeah. But other than that, I was willing to go to anyone. Anytime she wanted me to talk to like a pastor or anything, I would talk to them. I would go. I volunteered. I still helped at the church and stuff with whatever, and I was a part of that. But
I bet that didn't make you reconsider.
No, I mean it's just a matter of like whether I was convinced or not.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a very open-minded person because, like I said, I was heavily involved, and then I changed my mind. Yeah. And I'm still willing to if I find a reason that's convincing to me.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I have so much compassion for Christians and why I'm also like trying to start this productive. Yeah. That's why I love conversations like this where it's like we respect each other, and I've been to atheist events where there's like people just like bashing it who like grew up atheists and they just don't understand. I'm like,
just like Christians do to atheists.
Yeah. And I was like, I understand. I'm a fairly intelligent guy. Yeah. Like it's not a matter of intelligence whether you believe or not.
No.
It's a matter of environment or spirit or maybe he exists and that's why.
Yeah, true. My own view is that it's like I think of it as a mystery, just in terms of like if you're trying to actually account in some sort of, let's say, at least somewhat scientific way, even if you're just using psychological language or whatever. We know intellect plays a role, we know will plays a role, and so on, but emotions or all these things. But why actually does someone judge something to be true so that it leads them to commit to it in belief, which is what much of life is. Very few of us can actually personally confirm most of the truths, that we accept. And at least in big picture stuff, and especially scientific stuff, like real scientific stuff, because very few of us are scientists. And I, like in my conversation with Drew now for over a decade, I've just, like somewhere along the way, I just thought, I do not think I could explain why I believe what I believe, in the sense of like actually account for why I judge it to be true and he doesn't, or why I just in an isolated way can judge it genuinely to be true. And so the biblical stuff, I get that. In the biblical framework, there's a real God, and he speaks, and our faith is a response to his word. In a sense, I'm irrelevant, right? If I'm having a conversation with you, it's not like I have nothing to, what do I have to offer? Because I'm not him. Just like in a crude way, if I said, because I know you, I really trust your wife. Or no, she's not your wife? Your girlfriend?
Well,
I don't know if
sure,
you're married.
my partner, yeah.
Like your partner, whatever.
Yeah.
Your partner. Or let's just say it's your dad. Okay? Just because I hear you doesn't mean like I trust your dad.
Yeah, that'd be a mistake.
Okay. And what I mean is,
But I understand what
like,
you're
he's a
saying.
different person. To trust him is to trust him. So, like, if God is real, the question isn't whether people trust me, but whether they trust him. And it'd be between him and them, in a sense, ultimately. Now, I get that in the biblical framework, God, in the story of Christianity, God is sending out his people who, so long as they represent his own words, someone could come to trust God. And that clearly people do that. I heard about God from other people. I read the Bible, and I came to trust God. And sometimes people in those cases, I think they're trusting the people as well. And sometimes it's almost like they can get almost cultish, or actually cultish, where the person or the people or the church or the pastor, that's what they're really glued to. But that's not the biblical way it's supposed to work. And so I'm just trying to say, I'm telling you, that when we're having a conversation like this, I think I would have no idea what would lead a person to actually believe, meaning that person.
Correct. Yeah.
So there's no I have nothing in my head where there's like, oh, if I say this and say that and say this, checkmate. I just think, well, that doesn't lead to belief, not like trust, right? I mean, philosophers and lawyers corner me all the time when I'm talking to them, because they're good at how to have a conversation and catch you and turn you upside down. But it doesn't mean I now trust what they're saying,
But so you, based on your journey, you trust in God.
Yeah.
And if I were to tell you that in my journey I trusted in God.
Yeah.
So, but now I just don't think that he exists.
Yeah.
What do you think of?
I believe you. So I feel no reason to reject what from your perspective, you trusted in God. I take you as your word.
This wasn't what I was getting at, but I'm glad to hear that you're not a no true Scotsman kind of guy.
No true Scotsman?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
No
true Scotsman.
Well, there's a fallacy called the no true Scotsman fallacy, where it's it's the fallacy that's basically you were never truly a Christian.
Oh, yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, the one saved,
you're not
always
truly
saved.
a Scotsman if you do this.
Actually, I just had this conversation with some Christian friends of mine. They were asking this exact question. And so I asked them, because I'm really big on getting what Jesus actually said right before you decide whether you're going to reject it or accept it. So I said, well, we all accept the parable of the sower, right? Right? These are Christian friends of mine. And so let's go through. You have these seeds, and only the final one is actually producing life. That is the kind of life that Jesus is offering to people. It's an enduring, eternal life that they bear fruit and so on. So in the earlier seeds, let me just pick one of them, because they're all failures. They don't survive. One of them says they fell on the rock, they produced a little bit of life, and then the sun came, baked it, and it died. And the way it's described by Jesus in Luke, they for a while believed, and in time of testing fell away. Now, if I'm a Christian, who am I to improve on? Is it for me to correct what he said? He said they for a while believed, and in time of testing fell away. So I'm like, that's sufficient for me. If you say I believed, and I believed for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you don't believe. I'm like, yeah, Jesus talked about that. Whether that describes your exact situation, that seed, I'm not claiming that. I'm just saying he talked about something like that.
It's an interesting point of view that I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
And because I'm very familiar with that story.
And by the way, isn't it interesting how a story like that, which is so familiar, but you didn't know that detail?
Well,
why? How is
I never associated it with that. So
I know. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. I didn't mean you didn't know the detail.
Yeah.
I meant why? Because I hear this from Christians all the time, and I'm like, well, the parable of the sower is right there in front of us. So people have preached on it people have heard it preached.
I mean, everything is a matter of interpretation. I've heard the same.
Yep.
I've heard the same scripture, the same few verses talked
Yeah.
about in probably like 5 different
It's true.
sermons about 5 completely
But
different
are they all
things.
equally convincing?
They were pretty convincing. I mean,
Okay, all right.
at the time,
It could be.
right?
I mean, I agree with you that there's often, certainly on some passages you could read it 2 ways. I get that.
Well,
but
you're able to apply it to different things. Is what I was.
yeah,
getting at.
and again, the way I'm just telling you honestly, right? How I would think about this is, however someone wants to think about it, you can't change what's written. Like, it's pretty clear what it says. So it does say they for a while believed. So if someone tells me they believed and then they didn't believe, I would say, yeah, that reminds me of something Jesus said. Now, does that mean that's their exact situation? I'm not claiming that. I'm just saying it's not like that should shock me.
And you're not claiming to speak on his behalf,
I mean,
like
it's-
Jesus' behalf, but you're,
Yeah,
it's your
I'm
interpretation.
not him.
Yeah.
And I mean, he said it pretty plainly. It's not like it doesn't rely on Greek or something. It's in every English version. And frankly, it's not even just some abstruse passage hardly anyone pays attention to. It's the lead-in in all 3 of the Synoptic Gospels. It's a key lead-in story to the whole account of the parables and to a series of sequences of deliverance stories in all the Gospels. So it's a pretty like central
Yeah.
thing. Anyway, whatever. Yeah. What's I forgot where we were because we got on that whole thing. You asked me about. You told me your experience that you for a while believed and then didn't believe, and then interesting by the way, I was at the American Atheist Convention, and someone.
I've never been.
Oh yeah, this is a big one, and actually we were disinvited to the last one. So,
Really?
Yeah, which is pretty rare. I'll have to ask because we've had Nick on the podcast and stuff.
Were they given a reason why, or?
That they said there had been incidents at the convention that created an atmosphere that people didn't feel welcome or something to that effect.
Okay, that's fair, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel to me like in my conversations there's incidents, but and I'm pretty, as you can imagine, I'm not like
I mean,
a
it
big.
probably had nothing to do with you though, but it's just like
Yeah.
people's experience
Yeah,
of like, you know.
and I mean, in all fairness, I say this all the time to Christians. Christian conventions, they're not going to let atheists come and have an exhibitor booth.
Yeah.
So the fact that atheists
I
in
would,
their
I would
world
love to have an Ask an Atheist table at
yeah,
Christian convention.
if I were running a convention, I'd let you have a booth. I can tell you
Why
that.
don't you?
I don't run a convention.
You should.
Yeah, have you organized conventions?
I mean, I'm part of the SSA.
Oh, you are. That's right. I forgot you're a board member. So
you know
had
this
to
convention
actually do.
here, right?
Gosh, that really failed.
Welcome.
Like, how many people organize convention except the one I challenged? Yeah, maybe I should.
Also, not only that, but I started a nonprofit this year at the end of
Actually, you're making me think. Like, maybe I should, and then have a booth for you.
I started a
I think
nonprofit.
it'd be great. Maybe we should do a convention together.
I would love to, because
That'd be interesting.
in Savannah, Georgia, I have I'm a board game enthusiast.
Oh, yeah.
Love board games.
Board member.
Yeah. And one of the people that I play board games with all the time, she's a veterinarian, and she wanted to start a nonprofit for pet abandonment, basically, in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
So we work with abandonment shelters. We have a financial relief fund. It's called Barkus and Meow. There's an original one that started in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Okay.
And so we're like kind of like a sister of it now in Savannah.
Interesting.
And we have a relief fund for people that a lot of times their dog might have a medical surgery they just can't afford, so they just have to abandon it.
Yeah, that's
or
really
put it
common,
down.
right?
So
Yeah.
we want to help those people. We want to do pet education and seminars. All this to say, in order to get started, we needed to raise money, a fundraiser. So
Yeah.
our first fundraising idea that we got ready and set up and marketed everything within 2 to 3 months, board game convention. We had about, I'll say like 60 unique people show up. And we raised, that was twice the amount of people that we were hoping for, minimum
Yeah.
of 30. We had 60 people show up to play board games from all over Georgia.
Wow.
So
That's pretty impressive.
so not only this convention, but
Yeah.
also a board
so
game
you've been
convention.
even a board game. Yeah. So it's just like yes. So moving on.
You can
Yeah.
edit that out.
But yeah,
I just wanted to tell
like
you about it.
meaning what I meant was, like, I'm thinking, say you're having an apologetics convention, right?
Yeah.
Like I understand other types of conventions that may not sort of fit, but apologetics convention, like why wouldn't you want some atheists there that you have people actually talk to. And because...
To sharpen your,
Of course, because it's going to be 10 times harder than a person thinks. It's really hard, as you know. It can be very hard to have an honest conversation about what you think in a way that the temperature's low and you're actually being authentic, because people tend to just throw what they've heard.
Well, what's interesting to me about like the debate of like, so a Christian wants to convert a atheist, right? And for the most part, an atheist is like, I don't think you should believe it. I'm not really gonna try too hard to like deconvert you or anything. So the onus is really on, like, whenever it comes to that, it's like it's your mission to convert me. It's not my mission to necessarily deconvert you. So whenever it comes to stuff like, you know, let's say like the cosmological argument, people might say, well, you know, my answer is that God did it and this and that. I'm like, well, I don't find that convincing. It's like, so what do you think? Do you think it was I've had a lot of Christians put words in my mouth. I'm like, oh, so you believe in this? You believe Big Bang or this or that? I'm like, no, my answer is I don't know. So that's that argument is kind of like a non-starter. I'm not a I'm not a quantum physicist or anything. I can't answer that.
Of course.
But stuff I do love talking about is like, you know, morality. It's like I can understand morality. I love talking about morality. So it's like maybe, I mean, it would help Christians decide of like what kind of techniques to convert someone.
Well, so
I'd love to go to that this fictional convention.
Believe me, no. And the truth is that this is another thing I should probably do, because I'm like the only Christian at any of these atheist conventions, right? There's like 1 billion Christians in America.
Well, except for the mayor too.
So, the mayor was here. That's right. He gave a talk. But I'm like, you know, oh my God, there's like 1 billion Christians. Where are they? Like, is there not one? Like, aren't there like 1,000 apologetics organizations? You know, there's not one that come to talk to people.
And I feel like we're pretty welcoming.
Amazingly welcoming. That's the truth. I can't say everybody's always been welcoming, to be honest. And also, you know, one of my experiences in these interviews is occasionally people will want to share what they think, but they're afraid to in the context. Sometimes they'll say, well, I want to say what I think, but kind of like, I can't say this. Oh, we'll cut that out. And then they'll share a problem they have, you know, with the group, as would Christians if they were being honest with their group. And anyway, all that just to say it would be healthy to because Christians are supposed to love the truth. Like, that is everybody knows what Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth. So there's supposed to be a love of the truth, and you know, that means you have to be authentic, and it means, and this is truly hard. It's truly hard. You don't know until you've had lots of conversations with people who sort of stump you and disagree with you and all kind that maybe you just don't understand things you thought you did. And it sort of has to get chipped away, and you have to go, as you were, no doubt you know what I'm talking about. I don't think I agreed with the characterization of it's their mission to convert, because I was telling you, I have thought about this a little bit, that I think the burden on the Christians is to be witnesses for God, for sure. But to be a witness for God is more than just words. It's deeds. And to be a witness... It's
my favorite verse is James, is it James 3:33? Whom among you are wise and understanding, let it be shown by I'd have to look
by
it
the
up.
deeds,
So you're familiar.
But you're right. But I'm saying I think this is I think this is actually the focus of being a witness, is there's no like burden to convert someone, because you can't convert anybody. And people will say that.
I come from an evangelical background.
I know,
by the way,
but you know what I mean. What I meant is, like, I've heard Christians say this: is, oh, well, we can't convert people. Yeah, but you act like you can. You act like it's in your control to convert people, and you certainly leave the impression on people, like you think you can manipulate them into conversion, and or that you have some formula you're working with that will lead, like a mathematical formula, to a solution, which is their conversion.
Mathematical proof God exists. You've seen that video, those videos.
Although Gödel's proof is actually, Gödel is a whole nother level. But
I'll have to look into that. I don't know.
Gödel, Godel. He was at the Advanced Institute at Princeton with Oppenheimer and Einstein. Actually, I think he was with Einstein before Oppenheimer. But it has a different level of logic there. But he actually does have a proof. But he's like, they refer to him commonly as the greatest logician since Aristotle, so that's a little different. All I mean is, if a Christian really believed, we don't have the power to convert, but we're called to be a witness, right? A witness is saying, well, this is what I've seen, this is what I think is the truth, and okay, that is what your burden is as a Christian, yes. But how someone responds to it, you do not have any control over that. In the Bible, you have the apostles had no control over that. There's no pretending that they had control over that, to me. So I'm just reading it at face level that it'd be better if Christians behave that way. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel like I have to convert you or... Yeah.
I mean, it would be cool if there was more like miracles, but...
It'd help me. I wish I could do a miracle.
Yeah.
Or somebody around here.
Just have the faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah. Yes, if I only had the faith of a mustard, yeah. Do you ever read, by the way, the Apostolic Fathers? I'm just curious if you have. Like, this is Ignatius and Polycarp and that kind of Clement. The people who wrote, like, after the New Testament.
I don't think so.
It's okay. I was just curious. Cause
I want to say...
it was really helpful for me as a Christian.
From high school, I read a lot of the Bible.
Yeah.
And whenever I deconverted, of course, the most passionate atheists are the ones that just freshly, they're like...
Get another Bert Ehrman book. And
since then, it's been 8 years, and I do not have a great memory. I've been in the military. That affected quite a...
Yeah.
I have ADHD. All I combined is, like, when people ask me, like, do you read that? I'm like, there's a really good chance I did. But I do not... For the life of me, remember.
Believe me, I'm not a good reader. So, and as I tell it people all the time, even though I teach classical languages, right, in university. But the truth is, nobody in high school. I had very average grades. Mm-hmm. My ACT was actually, like, probably right at average, and maybe slightly above average. Like, I think I got a 21 or something.
Okay.
And nobody was like, Bill, you're really smart, and you just are misdirected or something like nobody ever thought I was really smart, and I don't think I am.
Well, I do.
No, I'm really totally convinced. So I'm saying that because I don't remember things anyway. But yeah, so in terms of the, I really wanted to go back to this.
You're from Hoover, Alabama?
Yeah. I'm from Minneapolis.
I mean, like, is that where the podcast is, though?
Yeah.
That's not too far from me.
Yeah, Drew lives in Nashville, and I'm in Birmingham. Where are you right now?
Come visit you guys.
Savannah,
Georgia.
You're still in Savannah. Okay, or you're back in Savannah. Is there some you have some atheist friends and stuff there? Not really.
There's, I have my little chapter at the school I go to, and then there is a
university you're going to. You mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now that I'm out of the military, I'm going to school full time.
Okay, great. I was Air Force and then went to school. So
smart choice. I was Army, which is second best.
Yeah. So anyway, but you have some because Drew and I have wanted to go to some different cities and interview like local chapters of different people we've connected with, and try and do 3 interviews on like a Friday night or Saturday morning with some people. So we'd love to come over to Savannah and do that.
I don't have a big group. There is another group of there's quite a few people in that one.
Yeah.
I've had some good experiences. I had a couple bad experiences, but that was like a single person.
Yeah.
But then one of the people that come to board game night, they heard me talking to someone about my beliefs and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you should come to this group." I'm like, "Oh, I've been there," but now it's like, "Oh, I know who you're talking about. Come back."
Yeah.
So
have you heard of Atheists for Liberty?
No.
So we interviewed a couple of those guys for the podcast, and they're people who used to be a big part of American atheists, and then by their account, they got sidelined and they became dissidents. And so when I asked the people who are still in American atheists, I've heard different sort of things like, oh, they're Nazis, because they're Trump people.
Oh, okay.
But they're definitely atheists.
Yeah.
And they're a little more I think Dawkins is on their board. Mm-hmm. So, because, I didn't know there was a reformation within atheism. So I was just curious if you had heard of them and knew anything about them.
I mean, it's so funny to have I get whenever a church splits because of a difference of opinion.
Yeah, right.
But it's atheism. It's there's not really a split. There's just these people that believe in things, and it's honestly unrelated to God. And then there's these people that believe in things that are unrelated to God because we just don't
obviously
believe in
all
God.
don't believe in God. Yeah.
But because it's like they typically agree on the same things, but politics are very divisive, so they just don't want to associate now. Yeah. So it's like pretty unrelated to the, but yeah, that's interesting.
But when I discovered them, I was like, well, this is not a group I expected to discover. And they're big into like Turning Point, and it's a. So one of the things about the MAGA world, is it's way more diverse. I mean, they had a fundraiser. Trump had a fundraiser in Silicon Valley, like a week ago. It's truly an
And I typically don't.
I'm not a political.
Get into politics at all.
I don't. I mean, I follow politics to some degree.
Absolutely.
But I feel more like a spectator following politics than I'm out there drumming up people to vote on one side or the other. But I do really see it's really weird time that we live in.
It's just funny because it's just automatically assumed, especially in a convention like this, that everyone that if you're an atheist, it means this, and it's literally all atheist means is that they're not convinced.
Yeah, I know. I've explained this to people too.
And it's as soon as it's so you're a Democrat, and I remember I've been a part of some Discord, debate groups, and I'm sure you're familiar with a T-Jump.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
He has a Discord that there's a community in, and some of them support him, some of them don't.
Yeah.
But there's some very separate side atheists in there. There's some very strong Republican atheists in there. There's some very strong Democrat or atheists in there. So it's just interesting to going in there and then hearing them being like they're kind of chummy, and then politics come up, and then they're very heated disagreements.
Yeah.
And then it's
like Christianity. Yeah. Suddenly.
It's
or Islam. Really, Islam's real. So, yeah, it is, and of course, SSA and American Atheists. I see more continuity there between those two groups versus American Atheists for Liberty. But anyway, it's interesting. Well, let me close out our discussion just because I think we've probably gotten long enough. And
I could talk all day, but
really appreciate you coming on
Thank you
for the interview.
I appreciate it.
All right.